Hi guys, how we doing? So it is Friday, it is the end of the week and we are all getting ready for the weekend. So yeah, today we've got our good friends from Venom Turbo with us. So we are going to be out turbos right now. This is my man Ben, this is the man from Venom Turbo. So we supply and fit lots of turbos, we supply and fit lots of stuff, but we will only ever fit Venom Turbo stuff. Genuinely, we won't fit or supply any other turbos. The reason being that we trust what they do. The turbos do what they're supposed to do. They work in the way that they're supposed to work and they fit. And that's because research and development goes into every single turbo that these guys make. Now, I personally have the third iteration of the prototype for the B9 S4 turbo that we're developing with Venom Turbos to get it absolutely plug and play, bolt on, ready to go. So I'm personally running 570 brake horsepower with a little bit more boost to go. So that's pretty cool. But he's bought a couple of other turbos and we're just going to talk turbos with you guys so that you guys can have some sort of idea of what happens, what goes on and why things are and all that sort of stuff. So, my man Ben.
How are we doing?
What have we got here? What is this?
Yeah, so this is the S4 Turbo. Like you said, you've got currently got the third one on your car.
Yep.
I mean, there's no issues with the turbo from a design perspective for doing what it should be doing. However, there's slight issues with the fitting of them. You know, there's a bit too much adaptation needed when we're coming to install them in the car, etc. So we've gone on to number 4, and essentially what we've done is we've redesigned the centre part. So the one that's on your vehicle at the minute is slightly wider here, which causes some slight issues from a fitting perspective. So we've shortened this, we've shortened the shaft inside. Essentially, it's going to be the same size from, you know, the wheels are going to be the same size. It's going to produce the same kind of power. But from a fitting perspective, it's just going to be much easier to get in the car. So certainly from a plug and play aspect, that's essentially what we wanted to do.
So that's pretty cool. So we had to make some things to fit because obviously everything's prototype. It's really difficult to get things straight off the bat to work exactly the way that you want them to. So we've had to make things fit. So when these turbos are sold, which in the UK it will be us and Venom, they're the only places you'll be able to buy these turbos from. It will essentially be in the box, you take it out the box, you take your old turbo off, you put the new turbo on. And that's what you want. You know, you don't want to start cutting things and moving things and making stuff because that's the worst thing in the world that you really want to start doing, especially, you know, say for example, if you're a handyman and you're doing it on your driveway, that's the last thing you want to start doing. You start having to take it to an engineer. So we're going to get it absolutely plug and play. Now, with this turbo, it has ceramic ball bearings in it. So I will let Ben explain what ceramic ball bearings are.
Right, yeah, so generally you do find that most car manufacturers release turbos on the cars with journal bearing turbos. Now what you've got inside this turbo, this is a standard CHRA from a standard turbo. You've got a shaft with a brass bearing around it, and then you've got another brass bearing which is a thrust bearing which sits that way around, and that essentially takes up all the lateral load when the car comes on boost. Now adapting to ball bearing, for one, gets rid of the thrust system altogether. There's no thrust bearing there, so there's no premature wear, you don't get any end flow, anything like that. Because journal bearing stuff relies on oil for lubrication, it relies on oil to actually take up some of the bearing surface. Again, you tend to find you get some resistance there, stuff like that. The ceramic ball bearings, there's very, very, very little resistance.
Yeah, no, we found that when we spun the turbo up. There's like literally
you can
nothing.
see it straight away.
Yeah, it just keeps going and going.
You know, and you don't actually need oil as such for ceramic ball bearings. You do get a very small oil feed for them. Generally, it's just to keep them a little bit cool and make sure that they don't wear out prematurely. But you know, in comparison to that needs a very, very good oil feed for it to run properly on the journal bearing. It literally takes 4 or 5 seconds of a pour or no oil feed, that turbo will be toast, gone.
Yeah.
The ceramic stuff, like I say, needs very, very little oil.
So it's actually better for longevity.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, your spool time's much better, longevity of the turbo, the strength of the turbo, because there's no thrust system in the ceramic ball bearing as well. You can push them turbos from a PSI perspective a lot harder than you can something like that.
So we're running. We've got that turbo. We've got the B9 S4 turbo, which is a
That is a Borg Warner 1853-25.
See, the man has autism. So yeah, we're running that turbo at the minute, and we've wound that up quite a bit. We're literally just shy of 2 bar. We're going to start turning that up a little bit, but I think what we're going to do is going to wait for the 4th iteration to come, get it all fitted properly, nicely, and then we're going to really turn up the wig. This should be good for 2.6, 2.5, 2.6 bar.
Yeah, no problem at
You
all.
know,
Yeah.
and that is a huge gain. So you're getting like half a bar of boost extra from what we are now. That half a bar is massive. It's a massive amount in comparison to, say, from 1 to 1.5, 2 to 2.5 is a phenomenal sort of distance. So, and you can do that as Ben was describing with the ceramic ball bearings due to the heat that isn't created. So, you know, and with all the oil and stuff that goes in it. We're also running a 2-litre TFSI KO4 hybrid on our other development car at the moment. That is being turned up slowly each time. We're turning it up. And the reason we do that is because we slowly develop everything. So the last thing we want to do is supply you guys with something that is just going to literally die after a minute or two. So we test, push. When it goes pop, we know when to back it off. And that is the only way you can do it. Anybody that says they've done testing on stuff and they haven't blown an engine up, they haven't tested it hard enough. So that's that. But what Ben has bought us is something really cool, which we can supply to you right now. This is available right now. We can fit, we can tune, we can work with it. And Ben, this is the...
Yeah, this is our Venom 550. So this is the turbo for the latest Audi S3, the Leon Cupra 280, 300, and what else is it on?
Golf RS3,
Golf R,
Cupra.
yeah, the 7.5. Again, we have altered it to full ceramic ball bearing. So internally, full ceramic ball bearing. The shaft's bigger. It's much stronger. I mean, the problem with these turbos from a stock perspective, the IHI turbos, the thrust system that we're talking about in that core assembler is very weak in these particular turbos. Also, the compressor housing internally has like a fibre insert for some reason. I don't know why IHI have decided to do that. We've heard horror stories numerous times about the compressor wheels catching inside the OE housings. So we machine that out, we put an insert in, weld it all up, and then reprofile it for the new wheel. The turbine wheel also being upgraded on these.
Look at that, that's massive. That is basically the whole part there. Yeah, that's awesome.
And the comp wheel.
Yeah, look at that. That is a sexy comp wheel. Look. You even get, this is how awesome these guys are. You get the little Venom logo just in there as well. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Again, these are a complete plug and play item. No adaptation needed. That turbo will bolt in exactly where your turbo is. Absolutely no problem.
And we're good for?
This particular one, we call it the Venom 550. Generally, they're pushing a little bit more than that a lot of the time. Introduced meth, you're getting 5.6 is no problem. We also do a 480, slightly babyer version of that. The spool times on the 480 are actually better than the stock turbo.
Yeah. Well, you got less mass to turn.
Yeah. I mean, these are on full spool at 3,200 RPM anyway. The 480, you can actually get them at full spool at about 2,800. They are crazy spooling.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That is some, yeah.
And because the IHI standard turbo as well, we do know that it's a weak turbo. We actually offer our Venom 400 on these, which is essentially same size compressor wheels as stock, but it's been adapted to ball bearing.
Wow, okay. So, there's quite a few options there, running Mark 7, Mark 7.5 platform, or the MBQ platform on the 2-litre TSIs. Yeah, so that's awesome. You know, you can get a much more solid turbo that will do essentially the same thing, but much more stable and much more reliable than the 480 and the 550. So you can choose. Obviously, there's going to be a price difference, isn't there?
Yes.
Obviously, the more work that goes into it, the more you have to pay. Unfortunately, that's the way the world works. So yeah, we can supply and fit those for you right now. So it's the 400, the 480. And the 550. So what I wanted to do now was we're just going to have a little chat about turbos and so you guys can understand a little bit more as well. So for me, I wanted to know, before all this, I was talking to Ben and I wanted to know why this is darker. What is this stuff that you put on that turbo?
Right, so in the reconditioned form, obviously we can offer turbos in brand new hybrid form, reconditioned form.
Yep.
A reconditioned turbo obviously comes in dirty. It's generally
normally looks a bit more like this.
Yeah, you know,
It's got stuff in it.
Yeah,
and all
it's got
sorts of
carbon
stuff.
all over it internally and everything. So they go through firstly they get stripped, they go through a wash process, steam cleaned, and then the housings get put through a blaster, steam cleaned again, all blown out, make sure there's no shot left in them, etc. And then we actually use it's actually a special spray oil that we put on them, just to keep them looking fresh for one, which is a bonus, but it also keeps them from oxidising it stops rust, appearing and stuff like that. And yeah, it gives a nice
Plus,
finish.
they look cleaner.
Yeah.
So this has more of a shower than I do. So this one's got an electronic actuator, and this one's got vacuum operated actuator. You can also get boost controlled actuators. Now, I personally prefer this system over the electronic system. This is maybe a touch slower than the electric system, but much, much more reliable. You've got so few moving parts. It's a diaphragm that the vacuum will suck, pull the diaphragm, and then that rod moves back, which then essentially closes that, which is the wastegate. What do you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from a basics point of view, that all day long. Because like you say, there's less to go wrong. You know it's going to work as long as it's got a vacuum feed. Same hand with the pressure ones, they work exactly the same as this, just in reverse, so they're held closed. And the pressure builds and then pushes them open to let the waste.
And that's where you have the spring rates. So,
yes.
Bit of advice. If you are fitting a hybrid turbo, please do not change the spring rate from the stock spring. The reason being that you are still going to have the same amount of boost at the start to start cracking that wastegate open. If you make that tougher to do, you're going to create way too much boost than what the ECU is asking for and what the map sensor's reading, and it will go into limp, or it will stick to it, and you are causing tuners like us just the biggest headache in the world. So, if it is boost controlled actuator, just stick with the stock spring, especially if it's hybrid. If that's what it was built for, leave it as is. Right, that's my rant out of the way. So. And with the electronic actuator, what do you think?
Yeah, electronic, obviously there's more control. You can open the wastegate marginally and the ECU can control it from a sort of right minimal to completely fully open. The ECU can have a full sweep of that control. But like you say, they are problematic at the best of times. These ones especially,
Yeah.
You also tend to find especially with the newer stuff, the electronic actuators aren't available on their own typically.
No, they'll come with the turbo, so it's turbo or nothing.
Yeah, so your actuator breaks, you can't replace the actuator, you've got to buy a new turbo.
You can get them reconditioned, but you never know quite what you're going to get. Most companies are normally okay, but it's still sort of a mix and match and whatever. So I thought what we'd do is if you can explain what the different parts of this is. So this sits inside that essentially like that. What do you call these parts?
This is a CHRA, which stands for Centre Housing Rotated Assembly.
See, it's school day every day here.
Every day. Generally sort of 5 to 6 components. So you've got the compressor wheel, that makes the compressed air. You've got your turbine wheel, that gets pushed from the exhaust gases, which in turn pushes that, which creates the compressed air. You've got a shaft connecting them. You've got the bearing housing, which the shaft, the bearings and everything else are obviously assembled in. And then you've got a heat shield here, which obviously keeps the heat from the turbine, the exhaust, keeps it away from the bearings and etc. that are all inside here.
So would it be that would normally fail when you start seeing a bit of smoke?
No, not generally, no. When you start to see a bit of smoke, it's what you've got behind both wheels. You've got essentially a little piston ring, and it's exactly what it says. It's a metal ring that clamps around the shaft, and it's for oil retention. When they start to wear out, they start to pass a little bit of oil. You tend to find if it's the turbine side, it's passing oil, you'll get white smoke from your exhaust. If it's compressor side, it's passing oil, you'll get blue smoke.
Because it actually burns in the chamber, whereas this is already past the chamber.
So it's burning up in the exhaust.
Also, if you say get a bit of smoke first thing in the morning, and then it clears up as it gets hot. So that C-clip that's in here, that piston ring that sits in there, when it's cold, is really tight. Really tight. As it starts to warm, physics 101, metal expands. It expands out and then starts to block it again, so it stops the oil coming through. So any smoke that smells of oil, looks like oil, stop, get it sorted out.
Absolutely.
It's something that's only going to get worse, isn't it?
And something to note as well, especially with an older turbo. So if you've got a car that's done 30,000 miles and you decide to put a straight through exhaust on it, the piston rings in turbos, both sides, actually rely quite heavily on a bit of back pressure.
Right.
So you'll get rid of your cats, everything else, you've got straight through exhaust, there's no back pressure coming back on that turbine. What you tend to find is you'll get a little bit of oil seepage, generally on rundown.
Yeah.
And again, when you fire it up first thing in the morning, little puff of smoke, and then it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're normally all right. It's when you sort of start getting consistent stuff that you just sort of go, oh my God. See, gone are the days. So you might notice with these turbos, they've already got the manifold. This literally bolts straight onto the engine. The same, oh, let's not break the table, as this and this side. They bolt directly on to the cylinder head on the exhaust ports. Now, that's a relatively new thing. I'd say, what, 5-6 years?
Yeah,
something like that, about 5-6 years. Before, you used to have a cast manifold, and then the manifold would come off the ports, and then it would go down, and then onto the turbo. So you've got a long distance to go for that exhaust gas to come, hit the turbo, and then spool it up. Whereas with these systems, because it's almost virtually instantaneously straight in there, straight being spun round instantaneously onto the turbine wheel. And that's why turbos these days are so awesome. They're so much better than they used to be.
Yeah, they're much more efficient. I mean, you've only got to look at a G series, like the G25, 550, 660.
Yeah.
It's a relatively small frame turbo when you compare it to like a GTX 3076, and it outperforms that turbo massively.
Yeah.
You know, it's much more efficient nowadays, yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, getting back to the manifold thing, with a manifold as well, what you tended to find is, because you've got 4 or 5 cylinders all going into one collector and then into a turbo, that could be a massive choke point.
Yeah.
You find it on a lot of ones that have got integrated manifolds, that you get a choke point on them.
And it just gets hot,
just can't flow enough. You know, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Your efficiency goes to 0, and then that's it. So these ones, I mean, the new TSI engines, the exhaust manifold, like you say, is actually integrated into the cylinder head. It's bolted straight to the cylinder head. It's water cooled as well, which obviously helps to keep the exhaust gases cooler. So yeah, they are a really good design.
So basically, anything that gets hot is bad.
Yes.
Pretty much, that's what we're saying. So anything that gets hot is bad. So that sort of system there, to be able to do that straight off of there, you're minimising the amount of heat that can be made, because it's moving, and it's moving directly and sooner over the turbine wheel than it would do normally. So look, guys, I hope you genuinely enjoyed that as much as I do. I am I'm a bit autistic when it comes to things like that. And engineering, it just gets me hot. Like, I get excited about this stuff. It's awesome. So, to recap, this turbo for the B9 S4 S5 SQ5, this is going to be its last iteration, and this will be available for sale 4 to 6 weeks, I reckon. 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. And you can only buy it from us and Venom, because we have developed it, and Venom have made the best turbo out there. Absolutely. Ceramic ball bearings, you cannot go wrong. There is no other turbo out there with ceramic ball bearings for this platform, is there?
That's a world first.
That is the world's first. So that's that cool. We've explained the turbo. Now this one as well. So for all you MBQ platform owners out there, 550, 480, 400. Wow. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for staying with us if you watched us the whole time. If you haven't, shame on you. But no, that's cool. We'll check back soon, and I hope you have a great Friday.
Great stuff.
See you later, guys.